So one of the main things we talked about in our video and the main topic is stereotypes. And we found out, and that was also our goal, that there are a lot of stereotypes about Eastern Europe, and that everyone has stereotypes. And we wanted to prove that there are a lot of stereotypes, and also that there are positive and negative stereotypes. And most of the ones we found out were pretty negative, I would say.
Yeah, some were, yeah. But isn't that mostly compared to stereotypes that are negative?
Yeah.
Sometimes, but people usually tend to put the bad before the good, so that's what happens.
Yeah, with the stereotypes as well, most of what we realize, most of the stereotypes, they're generalized.
Yes.
Like, as we ask people, they don't say that they have stereotypes for a few countries, they just have stereotypes for Eastern Europeans in general. Most stereotypes we've used in our movie, they have been generalized on the Eastern Europeans, not specified per country.
Yeah, there were only a very few stereotypes that were mentioned that were particular for one country, like the Polish. The stereotype that was mentioned quite a few times was that the Polish people steal.
Also the vodka drinking for the Russians.
For the Russians, but everything else was very general.
Yeah, because it's most of the time people say like, I'm from East European or I'm from Asia, so they're already beginning. It says it's some generalization, not in a specific country. So
and this also happens because mostly all of the Eastern European countries were in the Soviet Union, so that's why
we still put it together in one thing.
What we also believe as the generalization is that the generalization is also it changes from the origin of the person who generalizes. For example, you see generalizations from the Dutch people of Eastern Europe were different than the generalization from people from other nationalities of Eastern Europe.
It's very true.
Doesn't that also has to do with egocentrism? Like that people, see themselves better than, for example, Eastern Europeans, and then say negative things instead of positive things.
Yeah. One of the main reasons for generalizing and stereotyping is egocentrism.
Yeah.
Because you think your culture is superior and better.
But Eastern Europeans don't usually tend to do that. That happens from Western Europeans towards Eastern Europeans, and it's also a problem of racism, because I, being an Eastern European, it happens to me that everybody thinks I'm gypsy, because this is a problem for all Eastern European countries. Everybody considers us gypsies. So it's a very negative problem.
So through the stereotypes we heard, we also basically experience racism against Eastern Europeans.
But that's all to do with the same thing. Stereotypes is generalization, egocentrism, which in the end leads to racism. Yeah.
And the racism is more reflected by the negative stereotypes that have been reflected in the movie than the positive, obviously. So.
And also there was stereotypes between the Eastern Europeans, because when we asked them about their opinion, some of them said, well, it's not true for my country, but the gypsies in other countries, for example, steal. So there are stereotypes and also racism between the Eastern European cultures.
Because they see themselves as better than the other countries within Eastern Europe.
Trying to prove that their country is better than the others.
Yeah. Me. So Nora, what is the goal for audiovisual?
Well, the goal for our audiovisual was to show that there are a lot of stereotypes about Eastern Europe, and also that people generalize Eastern Europe and the people coming from Eastern Europe.
Okay. And who's the target group?
Our target group is students from the Hague University who want to go to Eastern Europe for the exchange.
Okay. And what is the message you wanted to cross with the video?
The message we wanted to prove is that there are stereotypes that people do generalize. That was our main idea.
But also maybe with that it's more negative than positive. Like
yes.
Let's say racism and egocentrism. That it's not like people only stereotype on a normal basis, like to discuss people.
But
like,
the stereotypes are mainly negative. Yes.
And why is your message relevant to your target?
Because the all the students who want to go to Eastern Europe will have certain stereotypes and will have certain prejudices. So it's important that they are aware of those stereotypes, but also that they know before they even go there that a lot of those stereotypes are not true. Because that was the second part of our video, and we tried to show that those stereotypes are definitely not all true.
And I think also it's important because a lot of Eastern Europeans coming to our country, so or at least Western Europeans. So it's good for people to know how to deal with their behavior.
Their culture,
and so, yeah.
yes.
Okay, look, what have you achieved? Did you achieve your goal with the video?
As we mentioned before, our goal was to show that there's a lot of generalization in stereotypes of Eastern Europe, and I believe we have proven this. And we've proven, and this can be confirmed by the illustrations. For example, from there's a lot of same stereotypes appeared. It was the poor, the stealing, the drinking. We had a few people who said about there's a lot of family, a strong family bond in Eastern Europeans. And this proves again that there is generalization. And then again, it's proved as well when we interviewed Eastern Europeans themselves. They said that some of them were true, but for other countries of Eastern Europe, so they weren't completely wrong. And they obviously agreed to some positive ones.
From which audio-visual, which examples illustrate your goal or message, and why those? So
yeah, like I mentioned before, the few stereotypes that were mentioned a lot proves that many people think the same way about Eastern Europe.
So basically, the interviewing shows that people from outside Eastern European say negative stuff, and
not only negative stuff, they just generalize. They don't precise their stereotypes on Romania or Bulgaria. They're just precise on the whole of Eastern Europe.
Yep.
Okay. Well, what could you do differently? It's a question for me, but well, I think next time if we do the assignment again, it should be more broad. So, for example, interview not only people from European studies and IB Maths, but do it all of the studies,
or even expand it.
Yeah. Because I think not only our faculty is going abroad for exchange, but also other students are, so it's helpful for them.
I don't think also we should not only precise on the faculty for the exchange, I think we should also precise on the different nationality we ask. We should ask a more broader nationality, maybe, for example, we ask a few people from the same nationality to see if they think the same. Yeah. So maybe we can refer, so we can compare whether they think the same way or whether it's just the way they've been brought up.
And also ask teachers in the university because they are the ones that teach Eastern Europeans, so they can make an opinion on how they study, how they act in class, and how they.
And they can also relate to a different generation.
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay, so different generations, more people from different countries,
and different age.
Yeah. Okay, Mary Shan, state your own critical question regarding to the contents of the audio visual.
Our critical question was, will going abroad to Eastern Europe change the way you see stereotypes and your generalization if you live with the people in those countries? And
what's the answer to it?
I think it does, because you get to know the people well, you get to see the good and the bad, and you get accustomed to the way they live, to their habits. So basically it's a good thing to learn how to deal with different kinds of countries and cultures.
You probably get over your stereotypes once you actually live in a country and in a culture.
Well,
At least that's what I have experienced.
I think some, you will get more like, okay, some are true and some are not.
Yes.
Because in the end, some will be true. For example, maybe with the drinking, everybody said, yeah, it is true, we drink more than Western Europeans. So when you go there, you see, okay, hey, you drink more.
Yeah.
But for example, with stealing, nobody, For example, if you're there, they're like, hey, nobody steals.
But also, for example, you probably realize that some stereotypes are true for some people, and they're not true for some other people.
Yeah.
So, and it's also because you start living there, and you develop your own rituals or your own ways to live in that country. You realize that that they're not true like much before.
It's a big difference seeing something on TV about Eastern Europeans and actually living it, because on TV they may put drinking in a negative light, but maybe they just drink to go out when going out to a party, not like drinking to get violent and stuff.
Or it's part of the family, it's part of the tradition of drinking.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So what I've learned from our presentation is that we realized that some stereotypes that have been mentioned about the Eastern Europeans are true and some are not. And what you also realize when we interviewed Eastern Europeans about them, that the stereotypes that are not true, that they take them quite offensively and might result and are some steps towards racism, towards their culture.
Personally, for me, this experience was a little bit frustrating because I heard a lot of negative stuff about countries in Eastern Europe and I'm Eastern European, but this proved me that I have to try to make a difference and to change people's opinion about my country and other countries related to my country.
For me, what I learned and also what surprised me is that there is not only stereotypes from Western Europeans or Asians, for example, about Eastern Europeans, but also that there are stereotypes between the different Eastern European countries. For example, when we ask, is it true that Eastern Europeans steal? Well, a boy from Bulgaria said, well, not in Bulgaria, but in Poland it is true. So also there are stereotypes between the different Eastern European countries, which really surprised me. And yeah, I did learn a lot about Eastern Europeans doing this project because personally before I never had any contact with Eastern Europeans.
Okay, well, I can give an example how I had an experience with Eastern Europeans, because I also never met Eastern Europeans for 1 year ago, but then I had some friends, and I think some stereotypes are true. For example, drinking, they were drinking way more than me, but some are not, like with stealing and stuff. In the end, they're really similar to Western European people. They just have different cultural things